The courtroom was silent, but it wasn't an ordinary silence. It was the kind that makes your chest heavy, like the air itself doesn't want to move. At the center of it all sat one of the most powerful men in music, a billionaire mogul who had built an empire out of beats, lyrics, and business deals. Sean Carter, the world knows him as Jay Z, a man who seemed untouchable. For decades, he controlled the narrative, the Grammys, the billion-dollar brands, the marriage to Beyoncé. Every move calculated, every headline managed. But what happens when the one thing money can't control comes crashing into the spotlight? Not a scandal, not a rival, not even the industry. Something far deeper. Blood. Family. A truth that had been buried for years, until today. Because behind all the wealth, all the power, and all the carefully crafted image, sat one haunting question. Can the truth destroy a legacy? And trust me, once you hear what happened inside that courtroom, you'll never look at Jay Z the same way again. Before we dive into this unbelievable story, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because the truth we uncover here isn't just about celebrities. It's about power, silence, and the one thing even billionaires can't escape. The room was overflowing, but nobody dared to move. Reporters, lawyers, fans, all frozen in place like statues. The kind of silence where you can hear every breath, every shuffle of paper, every heartbeat. It wasn't just a courtroom anymore. It felt like the center of the universe, as if the world outside had stopped just to watch what was about to unfold. And right there, at the very center, sat Sean Carter. To the public, he's Jay Z, the architect of billion-dollar deals, the rap icon turned mogul, the man who married Beyoncé and made himself a symbol of power and control. For years, he appeared unshakable, the picture of confidence and calculation. But today, none of that armor seemed to matter. Because today, what was on the line wasn't money, fame, or even reputation. It was something much heavier: his legacy. Across from him sat a man the world barely knew. No entourage, no headlines, no power. His name was Rymir. To some, just another face in the crowd. But to him, this moment was everything. He wasn't here for a payout. He wasn't here to ride off someone else's fame. He was here for the only thing he had ever asked for: the truth. One man had built an empire. The other had been ignored, dismissed, and silenced for over a decade. And now, in a room filled with cameras and whispers, their stories had collided. The weight of that collision hung in the air, pressing down on everyone watching. This wasn't business. This wasn't music. This was blood. And in just moments, the silence of that courtroom was about to be broken in a way that would shake both of their lives forever. For more than a decade, Rymir had been carrying the same story, one that almost nobody wanted to hear. He wasn't a celebrity, he wasn't backed by a PR machine, and he didn't have millions of fans to amplify his voice. All he had was his truth, that Jay Z was his father. But instead of being met with compassion, he was met with laughter. His claims were brushed off as desperate attention-seeking. Headlines labeled him a clout chaser. Strangers mocked him online. And every time he spoke up, the silence from Jay Z's camp only made him look smaller. Yet, through all of it, Rymir's request never changed. He never demanded money. He never asked for a check. He didn't care about the empire, the brand, or the fame. All he wanted was a simple DNA test. A single piece of paper that could either confirm everything he'd been told since childhood, or silence him once and for all. But silence cuts deeper than denial. Year after year, doors were closed in his face. The courts pushed the case aside. The press refused to take him seriously. Even worse, people began to twist his fight into something it wasn't: a scam, a stunt, a way to ride the coattails of a billionaire. The denial wasn't just in words, it became a kind of abuse on its own. A refusal to let him be heard. And still, he persisted. Because for Rymir, this wasn't about headlines. It was about identity. About finally knowing where he came from. Little did he know, the truth he had been chasing for over a decade was about to come crashing into the light, in a way that no one, not even Jay Z himself, could control. The room had held its breath for years, and now the moment had arrived. The judge picked up the document, glanced down, and read the words that would shatter more than just silence. The DNA matched. It hit the courtroom like a bomb. Cameras clicked endlessly. Reporters froze mid-typing. Jay Z, the man who had navigated billion-dollar deals without blinking, suddenly seemed human. His jaw clenched, his fists slammed the table. The composure he had perfected over decades was gone. Every muscle, every gesture betrayed shock, disbelief, a man cornered by truth. Whispers erupted among his lawyers, but their words bounced off him like static. The cameras captured everything, every tremor of his hands, every dart of his eyes to the floor. This wasn't a headline. This was history in motion. Outside, the storm had already begun. Social media ignited instantly. Clips of Jay Z's reaction spread faster than wildfire. Memes popped up within minutes. Hashtags trended. People debated, argued, mocked, defended. Within moments, the world had tuned in to watch a billionaire stripped bare by a single line of text. But inside, the energy was electric in a very different way. It wasn't just about the internet frenzy. It was about a truth long denied, a confrontation unavoidable, a life forever changed in a courtroom no one could escape. And in that charged silence that followed, everyone knew nothing would ever be the same. While the courtroom erupted in chaos, Rymir sat perfectly still. No grin, no fist pump, no victory dance. Just a quiet, haunted stare that carried the weight of years lost. For him, this wasn't a celebration. It was confirmation of a life spent chasing answers that should have come long ago. He thought of his mother, Wanda, the woman who had whispered the truth into his ear as a child, who had repeated it through every year of ridicule and dismissal. She had believed him when no one else did. She had carried his story like a shield, even as the world laughed and doubted. But she wasn't here to see this day. She was gone, leaving her son to confront the truth alone. The proof had arrived too late. The DNA didn't bring back lost birthdays, stolen childhood moments, or the comfort of knowing his father when he needed him most. It was a bitter acknowledgement of what had been denied, and the years could never be returned. In that moment, the triumph that outsiders might have expected never came. Instead, there was only grief, quiet and profound. A recognition that truth, while powerful, sometimes arrives after it has already done its damage. By the time the courtroom emptied, the world outside was already ablaze. Social media erupted like a wildfire, each post fanning the flames faster than the last. Hashtags trended within minutes. Clips of Jay Z's stunned expression were shared, remixed, memed, and debated endlessly. Every reaction, every glance, every gesture became fuel for a global conversation. Public opinion split in an instant. Some rushed to defend Jay Z, saying he was only protecting his empire, his image, his carefully crafted legacy. Others tore him apart online, calling out years of denial, questioning his integrity, and wondering how someone so powerful could be so humanly fallible. Analysts weighed in. Influencers spun theories. Podcasts dissected the moment frame by frame, turning a private confrontation into a cultural event. It wasn't just news. It was a spectacle, a story that demanded attention, likes, comments, and shares. Yet behind all the chaos, the human story remained. Rymir's quiet grief, Jay Z's shattered composure, the years of denial, the missed birthdays, the stolen moments, none of it could be captured in a meme or a trending hashtag. The spectacle raged outside, but inside, the pain was real, raw, and inescapable. And the world would continue watching, clicking, debating, while the lives at the center carried on with the consequences that no algorithm could ever quantify. And then, for the first time, it was just them. Jay Z and Rymir face to face, eyes locked in a silent conversation louder than any courtroom testimony could ever be. No words were spoken, no gestures made. Yet in that stillness, 1,000 emotions collided: regret, grief, disbelief, relief, anger. Jay Z, The man who had built empires and navigated some of the most high-stakes deals in the world looked small. His image of control, honed over decades, had crumbled. The armor of wealth and fame could no longer shield him. Here was a truth he had evaded for years, staring him straight in the eyes, unflinching, undeniable. Rymir didn't celebrate. He didn't smirk or gloat. He simply stood, carrying the quiet weight of a life spent chasing answers that should have been given long ago. This wasn't victory. It was recognition, the truth confirmed, but the damage irreversible. And then he walked away, calm, composed, but broken. Not because he had lost. The DNA had finally told him the story he'd always known, but because nothing could return what had been taken from him. The years without a father, the moments that would never come back, the silence that had been enforced for far too long. In that fleeting, silent confrontation, the world outside could only speculate. But inside, two lives had collided in a way that no headline could capture, no viral clip could explain, and no commentary could ever soften. The father and the son were no longer connected by avoidance or denial. They were connected by truth, raw, unfiltered, and irrevocable. Even as Jay Z walked out of the courtroom, the weight of what had just happened clung to him like a second skin. Outside, flashes from cameras pierced the air. Reporters shouted questions he didn't answer. Phones recorded every step. But inside, a storm raged that no PR strategy could contain. His empire, the brands, the deals, the billions suddenly felt fragile. The silence he had maintained for years had exploded into a reckoning he couldn't negotiate, spin, or control. Lawyers whispered urgently, flipping through papers, proposing next steps, crisis strategies, and appeals. But their words barely registered. The narrative had already escaped their grasp. Even more, Beyoncé's silence spoke volumes. The world speculated, wondered, and debated what her thoughts might be. The Carter's image, carefully curated for decades, now had cracks showing in real time. Questions loomed. How would this affect family? How would it affect business? How would it affect the man who had never been able to face the truth until now? And yet, no amount of strategy, no team of advisors, no empire could undo the damage that silence had caused. The legacy Jay Z had spent a lifetime building now hung in a delicate balance, wealth and fame dwarfed by the human cost of a truth denied for too long. The courtroom drama had ended, but the fallout had just begun. And for the first time, the billionaire mogul realized, some things are bigger than money. Some truths are unstoppable. This moment wasn't just about Jay Z. It wasn't just about one man's empire or one man's denial. It had grown into something much larger, a cultural reckoning. Millions of people around the world saw pieces of themselves in this story. Some saw Rymir ignored, dismissed, struggling to be believed, carrying the weight of a truth that should have never been questioned. Others saw Jay Z, the powerful, the untouchable, the one who avoided reality until it could no longer be ignored. The court had done its part. The DNA had spoken. The truth was undeniable. But truth alone could not heal. It could not undo the lost birthdays, the stolen childhood moments, or the years of unanswered questions. Rymir had the confirmation he had fought for, but closure remained out of reach. And in that, the story became a mirror. A reflection of how silence, avoidance, and denial can shape lives in ways that money, fame, or influence can never fix. This wasn't just a headline. This wasn't just a viral clip. This was a reminder that the human consequences of truth delayed are as deep as they are unignorable. In the end, the courtroom had given answers, but it hadn't given time back. It hadn't given the connection that should have been. And the world, watching, was left to grapple with what it all meant for the powerful, for the powerless, and for the fragile thread that connects them. Jay Z stepped out of the courthouse, the weight of truth pressing on him like nothing else ever could. His empire, his fame, his billions, all of it felt fragile under the relentless force of a revelation he had tried for years to avoid. Rymir had his answer, but not the moments he had lost. Jay Z had his reckoning, but not a way to turn back time. The world had witnessed it all, yet the silence between father and son lingered, heavier than any headline, louder than any meme. And as the cameras flashed and the internet buzzed with opinions, one question hung in the air, one question that no amount of power, money, or influence could ever escape. What's more powerful, a billion-dollar empire or the truth that finally caught up to it?